The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
The house at the end of the dirt road, where disembodied voices whisper and strange sounds make the living shiver.
Where shadows lurk at the edge of the woods, just outside your back door. And mysterious lights speed beyond reason across the clear night sky.
Odd events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everybody.
Beth and I have noticed that we have some new listeners to the Where Our Minds Wander podcast.
Which is always exciting.
Yes, welcome to the Wanderers family. And we'd like to say to all of you new listeners that if you have any questions, or if you have any topics that you would like Beth and I to cover in an upcoming episode, all you have to do is head on over to the Where Our Minds Wander website at whereourmindswander.com, and you can leave us an email. Leave us some suggestions.
Yes, and we will look into it for you.
And 4th of July is coming up, and this episode will release one day before 4th of July. So we'd like to wish you all a happy 4th of July. Be safe. Have fun with friends and family.
Eat a lot of good food.
That's right.
Watch some fireworks.
Maybe have some adult beverages.
Absolutely.
If you're into that. I know we're gonna just go right out on the front deck. The parade goes right by our house, and I think we will probably have a few beverages.
That's his plan anyway.
Yeah.
Or at least during the fireworks later at night. We'll have a couple beverages.
At night. We don't drink during the day. We're not day drinkers.
Well, not yet.
Not ever.
Not yet. Well, hey, it's nice to be sitting across from you this week in here in the studio where it's not as hot as it was a week ago when we were sitting here and it was over 100.
Yeah. It's got to be about 70 degrees in here.
Whatever it is right now feels a lot better.
I wish we could open up the windows, get a nice little breeze coming through, but we can't. Because all the little vroom vroom cars like to go by and all the motorcycles, everybody's out and they want to go down, see the river and see our statues down here at the mouth of the river that heads into the lake. So it's usually pretty noisy.
It is. I like how you said vroom vroom, cars. But just to clarify, they're not our statues. We don't personally own them. They are the town statues.
Right, the city of Plattsburgh.
Right.
But they're in close proximity. We can look at our window and see them.
Right.
So it's kind of like an everyday thing. You feel like you're part of them.
Right.
All right. I think everybody's probably tired of your rambling on.
Absolutely. Of course they are.
So we got a really cool place to cover tonight.
We do. And I love it when we come across a place that we've never heard before. And then we find out that it has an incredibly rich history and it's known for being incredibly haunted. Because then it just makes me think that there are a lot of other places out there still waiting to be talked about. And that's a good thing for us. We want those places.
Well, yeah, we like our share of haunted places, among other things.
Yeah. We do.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, you're like a giggly little girl tonight, so...
Well, maybe it's hotter in here than I thought. I don't know.
Yeah, it's because you're sitting across from me.
Absolutely.
I know.
All right, I'm going to get started, okay?
Yeah, you should do that.
Okay. The Jefferson Palace Hotel in Jefferson, Texas, is exactly the type of building that I was just talking about. It's a building with years of interesting history in a town full of interesting history. And there's enough ghosts within its walls for it to be perpetually booked if they were paying customers. From the outside, The Jefferson Palace Hotel is just a cool-looking building. It looks like it could be on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. First, it's a 2-story rectangular building that sits on the corner of West Austin Street and Dallas Street. It's painted a pale color, although I can't tell you what color exactly, because in some of the pictures it looks pale green, and in others it looks like it could be cream or white. The first story has a row of wraparound black pillars that hold up the wraparound second-story balcony that has red trim, and it's surrounded in black wrought iron railings. The second story also has 6 symmetrical 12-pane windows trimmed in black. So I may not have done the best job describing what it looks like, but just picture this kind of cool mix between Gothic charm and old Wild West brothel. Inside, the Jefferson Palace Hotel is a feast for the eyes. Each room is cram-packed with eclectic pieces. The walls are filled with portraits in gilded gold frames, right next to African tribal masks, clown posters, crucifixes, and mirrors. Hanging from the ceilings are antique pedal cars, right next to delicate chandeliers, bird cages, marionettes, angels, and disco balls. Every surface, whether it's the floors, the walls, the tabletops, or the ceilings, is covered with unique things to look at.
It sounds like our place. That's why I love this place so much.
I know, we just need a disco ball.
Yeah, that's what we need.
It's the only thing we don't have in that list of things. Well, we don't have a chandelier.
I lived through the 70s, and disco wasn't that great.
Yeah, but a disco ball is cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Jefferson Hotel offers 19 guest rooms, several of which have some pretty awesome names that merely hint at the theme you'll find inside their walls. There's the Owl Room, the Haunted Bride, the Oddities Room, the Cherub Room, and the Magic Showcase Theater, to name a few. Each of these, like I said, are theme rooms, and they live up to their names. Now, if none of the themes speak to you, you can always book one of their non-theme rooms. The Oddities Room, as you can imagine, is filled with, well, oddities. From dragon masks to monk statues to an antique wheelchair. The Magic Showcase Theater Room is actually, if I'm being honest, a lot creepier to me than the Oddities Room because it has marionettes, cymbal-clapping monkey dolls, and clown figures. There's just something about a Ronald McDonald doll sitting in the corner just grinning from ear to ear that kind of creeps me out. And speaking of dolls, there's a Dolls and Stuff room too, filled with, of course, dozens of dolls. But they aren't just sitting. Oh no, they're hanging from the ceiling, they're stapled to the walls, and they are perched on top of the furniture. But even Bigfoot has a room at the Jefferson Hotel with the completely immersive Boggy Creek Camp Room. According to the hotel's official website, the Boggy Creek Camp Room is like stepping into the woods. There's a cozy, rustic tent for you to sleep in, surrounded by trees, a babbling stream, and soft grass. Inside the tent is a queen-sized bed, which is great if you aren't up for sleeping on the floor, because all of this is inside one of the hotel rooms.
That's pretty cool. And what I like about this place is it keeps people coming back, because I imagine a lot of people say, well, tonight I'm going to spend a night in the Bigfoot room. And then maybe the next time they come back, they spend the night in the doll room. So it keeps people coming back.
I know, and exactly, because when I was looking at all of the different rooms, specifically, of course, I was thinking to myself, which room would I pick that I would want to sleep in? And I couldn't pick. I mean, there's some where I was like, but there was like 10 of them where I was like, well, I'd pick this one or I'd pick that one.
The Boggy Creek room sounds the best to me. But it's such an awesome idea if it's done right.
Well, it sounds like it is done right, because if you get bored in that room, although I don't see how you possibly could, there's a TV hidden in one of the trees inside the room.
Wow.
And to complete the ambiance, the room actually has changing weather, including thunderstorms and rain. And if you need to pee, there's an outhouse close by your tent, complete with a clawfoot tub. But I want to be clear, it actually looks like you're going into an outhouse when you need to use the bathroom. And if that's not enough, the hotel promises strange noises in the middle of the night, strange light anomalies, and moving objects, all because Bigfoot is in the room with you. How cool is that?
It's super cool.
So I don't know how they pull it all off exactly, but it sounds really awesome. The Jefferson Hotel also has a ballroom. The 1,250 square foot Crystal Palace Ballroom, named after the Crystal Palace saloon that once operated inside the building, is probably the most difficult to describe. It's a mix of like Vegas wedding chapel meets space-agey lounge area, but with some very, very expensive 100-year-old chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. The centerpiece of the room just might be the 3-paneled stained glass window display featuring St. Stephen. All of the panels, which were made in the 1800s, include specially cast glass beads that create an actual rosary within the window. The place is amazing, and with so many objects, there's bound to be some spirits attached, of course. Well, when you add in the history of Jefferson itself and the history of the building, it's no wonder that 12 out of the 19 guest rooms are said to be haunted by at least 5 different spirits. But before we get into the ghosts, let's look at the history of Jefferson. Now, it's not exactly known when Jefferson became a town, but it didn't show up on any maps until 1844. Most historians believe that the town had 2 founders, Allen Urquhart and Daniel Alley. Urquhart was a professional land surveyor who, sometime prior to 1844, purchased a tract of land between Big Cypress and Black Cypress Creeks, according to visitjeffersontexas.com. He picked that spot because the Big Cypress Bayou allowed steamships to dock 8 miles further inland than any other nearby ports, and it was big enough for them to turn around in. He planned his town very carefully, making sure that each business faced the water, so they had easy access to incoming and outgoing cargo ships. Daniel Alley was a professional real estate developer who bought the tract of land just outside Urquhart's business district. He immediately set out planning the residential areas of Jefferson, building his streets along the 4 compass points, north, south, east, and west. The 2 men are considered visionaries in a lot of ways, and within 16 years of Jefferson finding itself on the map, literally, the population had grown to 4,000 people. But it was 1860, and Civil War was brewing. Marion County, where Jefferson is, voted unanimously to secede from the Union, and the town became a vital supply point for Confederate troops. This also made it a major target for Union troops, who planned to burn it to the ground. But luckily, that didn't happen. Jefferson was so prosperous that it became the first town in the entire state of Texas to have artificial gas lighting in 1867. And in 1868, ice was artificially being made and sold in town. It even had its own trolley system. By 1870, 200 new buildings had been erected in town to accommodate the 30,000 people who had flocked there. 1873 was a pivotal year for Jefferson, but not in a good way. For years, a massive natural log jam called the Red River Raft had existed. The log jam was what allowed water levels to rise in the bayous, and it's what made Jefferson so easily accessible by boat. Well, that year, the U.S. Corps of Engineers deemed it a navigational hazard, and they removed it. This seriously affected people being able to get to Jefferson by boat. And then the Texas and Pacific Railway line between Texarkana and Marshall was completed, totally bypassing Jefferson. By 1885, the town's population dropped to just 3,500. What was known as Jefferson's golden era had ended. And although this really doesn't have anything to do with the Jefferson Hotel per se, I wanted to mention that there was a trial of the century that happened in Jefferson in the late 1870s. Annie Stone stepped off a steamboat in Jefferson for the very first time in January of 1877. She was extravagantly dressed, and she was dripping in diamonds. With her was her business partner, Abraham Rothschild. Everyone was taken with Annie Stone, who was more commonly known as Diamond Bessie Moore, the famed prostitute. One afternoon, Abe and Bessie were seen crossing the bridge over Big Cypress Bayou with a picnic basket. Later that day, Abe returned to town alone. A few days later, Bessie's body was discovered in the woods. She had been murdered, and the murderer had stolen all of her jewelry. Now, Abe was obviously the prime suspect, and his trial proceedings were splashed all over the nation's newspapers. However, he was ultimately found not guilty. The reason that I'm mentioning this case is because every year the Diamond Bessie murder trial is actually reenacted by local residents during the annual Jefferson Pilgrimage, a celebration of the town's history, which includes a parade, a heritage quilt exhibit, tours of the historic homes, a craft fair, and Civil War reenactments, too.
Wow. All along with a death of a prostitute.
Murder trial. Reenactment.
Unbelievable.
Well, it sounds like, they're an interesting town to visit for sure.
I wonder how many young women are lining up to be the Jefferson prostitute.
Well, probably none, because it's more about the trial than it is about, the murder.
Well, that's true. They don't reenact the murder because they have no idea how it happened.
Right. They They don't reenact the murder. Oh my gosh.
I know that sounds sick, but it's where my mind went.
Of course it did. Now, speaking of historic buildings, which we weren't, but let's pretend we were. Initially, on the spot where the Jefferson Hotel sits now, town founder Allen Urquhart built a cotton warehouse in 1851. According to historicjefferson.com, by 1860, everyone referred to this building as the storehouse. Sometime in the 1860s, the storehouse was purchased by Henry B. Orton. Orton renovated the existing structure by adding a second story and expanding it to cover an entire city block, with entrances from both Austin and Dallas streets. He also constructed the entire thing out of brick so that it would be fireproof. Well, he hoped it would be fireproof, which it turned out not to be. When a fire engulfed almost all of Dallas Street in 1869, causing $1 million in damage, Orton's building was nothing but ashes. He began rebuilding immediately, and his next building is the structure that the Jefferson Hotel fills today. But back in 1870, it housed several businesses all at the same time, like C.J. Schwab's International Bar Room, J. Zowell's Coffee House, and L.T. Edwards' Italian Restaurant. In 1873, Miller, Yowell and Company opened the infamous Crystal Palace, a saloon that did a booming business. From 1874 to 1882, there was a hotel inside part of the Orton building called the Pruitt House, which was renamed the Grigsby House when Mrs. Nancy Grigsby took over the lease in 1882. This was about the time when Jefferson had begun to decline, when the Red River Raft was removed and the railroad bypassed the town. The Orton building was falling into disrepair, and by the late 1800s, the first floor was turned into a livery stable, and the top floor became a year-round indoor skating rink, providing some much-needed respite from the Texas summer heat. In 1905, contractor J.N. Thomas renovated the second floor into an even grander skating rink, and it provided space for the Republican County Convention.
That had to be a lot of weight up there on the second floor.
I know.
A skating rink.
Yeah, that's what I was
all
thinking.
Things.
I was thinking that too. The Grigsby Hotel was still operating in the Orton building, which, by the way, was now called the Old Armory Hall. And in 1912, Nancy's daughter, Lydia Grigsby, was set to get married inside her mother's establishment. But as the moment of the ceremony approached, no one could find the groom. He had run off, leaving her at the altar. In her grief, Lydia went up to her mother's bedroom, room 12, and hung herself from the 12-foot-high headboard of the bed. That bed now sits in room 19 of the Jefferson Hotel, the room which is known as the Haunted Bride. Now, at some point in the late 1800s or early 1900s, part of the building was used as a brothel. I couldn't find exact dates, but there's a staircase still in the back of the building that was allegedly used by the working girls to enter and exit the establishment. Allegedly, one of the girls, named Judy, was stabbed to death in her bathtub in room 19. Now, there is no confirmation of this story, but it is a rumor that has persisted ever since. By 1912, the entire building was turned into the new Jefferson Hotel. And by the 1920s, it was run by Mrs. Schluter and her 3 sons, Win Osborne, Budge Osborne, and Boots Osborne.
Those are some unusual names.
They're like 1920s gangster names.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Boots.
Yep.
So during the week, Mrs. Schluter ran a respectable and elegant hotel. But on the weekends, Win, Budge, and Boots threw some very wild parties. The hotel lobby became their dance hall, and illegal booze was available at the bar. Fist fights and bar brawls were a common occurrence. While trying to calm down one particularly rowdy crowd one night, Win Osborne took a whiskey bottle to the head, and the elderly caretaker fired a round from his 12-gauge shotgun into the ceiling. It's even believed that Bonnie and Clyde may have used the Jefferson Hotel as a hideout sometime between 1922 and 1936, although trying to prove that as historical fact has so far been impossible. In 2020, Pam and Jeremy Jones took over the Jefferson Hotel, filling all 13,000 square feet with those artifacts, oddities, and antique furniture that I mentioned earlier, creating a pretty unique hotel experience for their guests. Now, there are 2 mysterious rooms in the hotel that guests don't typically get to see, like the very small door that's up in the attic. When it's opened, it reveals a tiny room, just 6 feet wide, with no windows. And in the floor is a hole, which leads down into a slightly larger room that is hidden from the rest of the hotel. It's thought that these 2 connected tiny hidden rooms were what is known as a disappointment room, an area where families could tuck away the children that they wanted to keep hidden from the world, or at least their judgmental neighbors.
That's the first thing I thought of when I heard about this.
Yeah. It's awful.
I know, but it happened quite a bit back then.
The general consensus, based on the nails that they found in the walls, is that it was built during the time of the Orton family. And staff at the Jefferson Hotel have reportedly seen the apparition of a little boy inside the disappointment room. Now, there's no way of knowing if this little boy's spirit just hides in there because it's quiet and he can get away from everybody and nobody bothers him, or if he actually did spend time in there during his life. There's also reportedly a hidden room in the basement, which over time has been completely closed off. According to HistoricJefferson.com, a former hotel employee who used to fold laundry in the basement remembers there being a steep staircase with no railing, and there were rumors that a former employee had tumbled down those stairs to their death. But the long history and the eclectic theme rooms at the Jefferson Hotel aren't the only reasons to check out the iconic building. Like I had mentioned before, 12 of the 19 guest rooms are said to be very haunted. And Wes will get into that after this quick break. Hey, did you know? Sometimes even the most brilliant people have had some very bad ideas. Like Sir Isaac Newton. He may have discovered gravity, but his cure for the bubonic plague wasn't so great. He claimed the best way to cure the plague was to suspend a toad, quote, by the legs in a chimney for 3 days, collect its vomit with various insects in it onto a dish of yellow wax, and to then combine powdered toad with its excretions in order to make lozenges that would be worn about the affected area. There's no word on whether anyone ever tried it, but we're pretty certain it wouldn't have worked anyway. Who'da thunk it?
All right, we're back, and I'm going to go into the details of the rooms and why they're presumed haunted. You kind of know a hotel room is haunted when they keep a book of death at the front desk that chronicles all the guest and employees' experiences that they just can't explain. You can even request the book of death if you want to, just to read it, or if you want to add your own encounter that you've had with a ghost. So, due to the number of haunted rooms, I think that I'll start off going in order of the room numbers, and then talk about the ghosts that don't seem to be tied to a particular room. Room 0, which doesn't have a name or a theme, actually looks pretty inviting. The walls are painted a pale blue, which makes the heavy antique pieces and regal dark blue velvet chairs stand out. Apparently, when some renovations were done in this room, they found gemstones hidden underneath the floorboards. The room has 2 queen beds, which apparently have been known to levitate off the floor while guests are sleeping in them. Guests have also reported hearing a man's voice yell, "No!" very loudly from somewhere inside the room. They've also reported hearing what sounds like heavy objects being thrown inside the room, but when they look, absolutely nothing is out of place. Room 2 is also a non-theme room, but it's also decorated with antique furniture and has a king-size bed. Guests staying in this room have written in the Book of Death that they actually saw full-bodied apparitions walk through the bathroom wall. They've put down objects and then found them in other spots, and even the furniture has been known to move on its own. Like Room 0, Room 2 also has its fair share of disembodied voices. The Cherub Room, or Room 3, is decorated with many angels. There are angels on the candle holders, pictures of cherubs on the walls, and cherub pillows on the bed. Guests staying in the Cherub Room have actually caught a video of the ghost of a little boy looking out the door, which you can watch on YouTube. But more common reports are of hearing children laughing and having the shower turn on by itself. The little boy who was captured on film is just one of a few child ghosts that are seen at the hotel. They all appear to be about 7 years old, and the little boy has red hair. It's believed that the children once worked in the building when it was a cotton warehouse, and they are often referred to as mill children. The exception is Sarah, the ghost of a little girl who died in a fire. In a 2018 Longview News Journal article, former hotel manager Jody Breckenridge, current manager Alicia Montgomery, and housekeeper Denise Garza were all interviewed about the paranormal happenings in the hotel. Montgomery said that Sarah is famous for moving objects and that she likes to play right at the top of the stairs on the landing. Because these are little kids, all of the children ghosts like to play kid-like type pranks on guests, especially turning lights on and off and snatching small objects like guest keys and then putting them back somewhere else in the room. Montgomery added that all of them seem to enjoy the little gifts that guests sometimes leave for them, like pennies and marbles. And whenever guests claim to have seen the children's ghosts, she always asks them about what they looked like. Sarah is seen in a white top, a pinafore, and high-top black boots. The little boy is always in knee breeches, which is typical of what the mill children would have worn back in the day. Denise Garza said in the article that sometimes when she's had enough of the children turning the lights on and off on her, while she's cleaning rooms that she'll firmly say, "All right, children, enough is enough," and the activity will stop. Well, at least until she can get her work done for the day. Now, the oddest looking room, to me at least, is room 6. Just looking at the pictures of it online makes me kind of uncomfortable because it's a long, narrow room, almost like a hallway, with 3 queen-sized beds side by side, with not much room around them. Room 6 is also called the miratorium because every inch of the walls are covered in dozens of mirrors in all shapes and sizes. Now, if you know ghost lore, then you know that there is some belief that having 2 mirrors facing each other in a room can act as a portal. Well, this room has about 40 mirrors facing each other. So, it's no wonder that guests have captured photos of what appears to be ghostly faces reflected in the mirrors around them. But that's not all. They've also reported, quote, ghostly residue that appears and disappears on the beds, and to hear scratching noises across the carpets and bed covers. Hiding in the bathroom probably isn't an option, because the doorknob apparently jiggles quite often as if someone is trying to open the door.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
What do you think ghostly residue might be?
Well, I'll take a stab at that. Perhaps it's just vanishing ectoplasm, right? Or perhaps it's ghost juices. I mean, it is a bedroom. And we don't know if ghosts can get it on. I guess if you had black lights in there, you'd be able to tell. Well, you wouldn't be able to.
Would you?
It might not just be from the ghosts. More than likely, it wouldn't be from the ghosts. Maybe ghost spooge glows a different color.
Well, that would be something to do some scientific study on.
Yeah, there's one that should be looked into.
I'll sign you right up for that.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's a place that we could put in to have a ghost juice study done. Perhaps so. But moving on, room 9, the nautical room, is pretty cool. It's filled with ocean exploration themed items like an antique diver's suit. Guests staying in this room have reported the sound of footsteps walking around and the lights flickering off and on. But there are also shadow figures that appear in the bathroom. Now, the Pride House was the very first B&B to exist in Jefferson, Texas. It was built in 1888, based on mail order blueprints. Over the years, it went through both several owners and several fires, before the last fire claimed the entire building in 2013. The Pride House room, or Room 10 in the Jefferson Palace Hotel, pays homage to the B&B, with a few artifacts from the former establishment and written historical accounts. Guests who stay in the Pride House room have said that they've heard heavy breathing in their ears that they couldn't explain. But they have also claimed to have seen the apparition of another little girl. This little girl, who they call Jenny Brown, after a little girl who died in one of the Pride House fires, seems to stay in just this room, so perhaps she's tied to one of the artifacts. But I'm also wondering if Jenny Brown and the apparition, some articles referred to as Sarah, are the same entity, because it seems odd that they have 2 little girl ghosts who both died in fires.
It's sad, at the very least.
It really is.
But it is unusual, I think, if it's totally unrelated. So maybe they are the same entity.
Room 13 was the original room where the 12-foot tall bed was kept that jilted bride Lydia Grisby allegedly hung herself from. That bed has been moved around quite a bit from rooms 12, 13, and 14. It's currently in room 19, which I'll get into in a second, because it seems like some angry energy has been left behind in room 13. Both the lamp and the table it was sitting on were reportedly thrown across the room in front of guests by some unseen force. Pictures constantly fall off the walls, and apparitions have been seen standing outside the door to the room. But that 12-foot tall bed the one that's now in room 19, seems to be a haunted object. However, there's some dispute over who it's attached to, whether it really is Lydia Grisby or if it's a woman named Elizabeth, who was also left at the altar some 50 years after Lydia was. No matter which woman the spirit belongs to, the staff at the Jefferson refer to her as Libby. And since her spirit seems to go to whatever room the bed is in, they believe her spirit must be attached to it. Now, Libby tends to show herself to male guests who are traveling alone. She appears as a beautiful young woman with blonde hair, dressed in her bridal gown. They say that she floats a few inches in the air because her feet never seem to touch the ground. There have also been reports of loud banging against the top of the headboard that can't be explained.
Maybe it has something to do with the ghost residue that we were talking about earlier.
Well, I'm thinking that could be true. But the bed isn't the only haunted object in room 19. There's also Judy's mirror. The rumor and general belief is that when part of the hotel was a brothel, a teenage girl named Judy was stabbed by a client and left to die in the room's bathtub. Apparently, after using the shower, guests have found messages in the steam on the mirror. According to hauntedrooms.com, some of the messages have been warnings, while others have felt more like pleas for help. The name Judy has also appeared on the mirror. The other common report in room 19 is hearing water splashing around in the bathtub when the bathtub is completely empty. Hearing women's disembodied voices in the room is also quite common. Room 14, the dolls and stuff room, isn't for anyone who has pedophobia or the fear of dolls. Like Beth said before, the room is covered in them, and not just sitting on furniture. Many of them are attached to the walls and hanging from the ceiling. In room 14, the bed covers have been caught on film, just lifting up from the bed all on their own. And several of the dolls have also been caught on film actually moving. Footsteps have been heard walking around the room also. Since a lot of this activity is coupled with the sounds of children playing, they could be the ones moving the dolls and lifting the bed covers. Now, there are 3 more rooms that I want to talk about. Rooms 15, 17, and 8. Room 15, or the train room, is filled with dozens of items related to model trains. This room is known for shadow people and for unexplained loud banging coming from the bathroom.
That makes like 3 haunted bathrooms in this place.
I know it could be pretty unnerving, especially if you go there with young children. Although I don't know why parents would take kids to this place. Maybe the Bigfoot room.
Well, yeah, that could be cool. But that could be petrifying too if you're a nervous kid that, I don't know.
They won't make it to the bathroom, that's for sure. Well, now that I think about it, there's actually 4 haunted bathrooms. Room 17, the Owl Room, has gotten quite a bit of attention in recent years, due to some creepy messages left on the bathroom mirror in there also. The Owl Room has 2 double beds, pale pink walls, and a definite owl theme. There are owls of all kinds, ceramic ones, wooden ones, painted ones. They also hang from the walls and the ceiling. Some guests have reported hearing disembodied voices inside the room, but for one couple, they got more than that. According to a KNUE 101.5 article, a couple checked into room 17 and then left halfway through the night at 1 a.m. because they were so freaked out. Apparently, the couple decided to take a shower, and when they happened to look at the bathroom mirror, there was a message written in the fogged-up glass that said, "You must leave."
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe the ghost didn't like that they were conserving water by taking one shower.
Perhaps they just didn't like seeing these 2 naked in the shower.
Well, everybody's naked in the shower. You don't wear your bathing suit in there, do you?
Perhaps they were someone that they didn't want to see naked.
Oh, that's not nice.
Moving on. Probably thinking that it was a prank from the previous guests, they wiped it off and continued to run the shower. But the next time they looked at the mirror, it said, "Get out." So they did. They left so quickly that hotel staff said that they'd even left a bunch of their belongings behind in the bathroom. But curious, 2 of the staff members decided to run the shower and fog up the mirror so they could see for themselves. They did see the words "Get out" written on the mirror, so they took a picture. In the picture, behind the 2 staff members' reflections, is a third person's face. You can see the picture online if you'd like to. I would suggest it.
It's pretty creepy.
Yeah. And finally, room 8, the oddities room. Not a lot is known about the spirit in room 8, and luckily it doesn't seem to bother guests, just employees. Like Courtney Wells, who was quoted on drumbeat.com as saying that one time when she was walking in just to take a picture of the room, she suddenly felt like hands came around her neck and started choking her. She said that she had actual handprints on her neck, and she has never set foot back in room 8 ever again.
Oh my gosh.
I know. That's quite traumatic.
That they're lucky it doesn't do that to guests.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange stuff going on.
For sure.
There's being choked, there's headboards banging, and there's some mysterious ghost juices left behind.
Ghost fluids.
I'm not sure what to think. So that's it for the specific guest rooms. But that's not it for the hauntings. There is actually more. Like the captain, also known as the Vanishing Man. The captain is quite tall. He wears a long duster-type coat, and his pants are tucked into his boots. Typically, he's seen walking down the hallways of the hotel, and guests usually think that he's a living person. But when they round the corner, and there's nowhere for the captain to have gone, they can't explain how he's just disappeared. According to drumbeat.com, the captain also likes to pick random guest rooms and watch over people at night, which is a little creepy.
Yeah, it's a little creepy.
A little voyeuristic. But its former manager, Jody Breckenridge, and current manager, Alicia Montgomery, who have really seen all the paranormal activity throughout the years. Montgomery said in the Drumbeat article that one night while she was working late on the computer at the hotel, 2 of the phone lines lit up. Now that would be fine, except she didn't have a single guest staying in the hotel, and all of her employees had gone home for the night. As soon as the lights turned off on the phone, she could hear the distinct sound of plates and dishes being moved around, as if a dinner party was kicking off in the other room. Now, at other times, appliances in the hotel just turn on and off by themselves, especially televisions. So, I guess if you want to work at the Jefferson Palace Hotel, the paranormal is something that you're just going to have to get used to. But for some guests, the spooky happenings can be a little bit too much for them to handle. Montgomery referred to them in the Longview News Journal article when she said, "We've had people leave in the middle of the night or sleep on the couch in the lobby. Some people say they feel touched or will hear people talking to them and think it's their wives, and their wives are sound asleep or vice versa, which can be pretty unnerving when it happens to you. But since the Jefferson Palace Hotel is known as the most haunted hotel in all of Texas, you kind of have to expect it. I mean, at least a little bit. And I think that would definitely be a cool place to go to.
Absolutely. But which room would we stay in? We'd have to stay for like a week so we could hit all the different rooms.
I like the sound of the Bigfoot room with the tent and, the outhouse for the bathroom and the pond. They have water there.
That would be cool.
And they have the the room that changes with different weather and everything?
Yeah.
That sounds pretty cool.
That is cool.
And I don't think there's any Bigfoot spooge there also.
There's been no reports of Bigfoot residue being found in the room, no.
So there you have it. This would definitely be a very cool hotel for any of you wanderers taking a vacation in Texas to take a look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or even if you live in Texas and you haven't heard of this place, check out the Jefferson Palace Hotel.
And if you'd like to know more in the meantime, you can always check our sources in our show notes where we have all information that you can look into on your own.
That we do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode.
Yes.
Join us again next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.
See you soon. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to traveling with you again to the places where our minds wander.
If you like what you heard, please take a moment and provide us with a 5-star rating and a comment on your favorite listening platform. It really helps us move up the list and become more visible on the podcast charts so new people can find us.
And thank you all for your continued support.
See you next week for an all-new episode.